Hi, everyone. My name is Angie Vishianan. I am the founder of Leg Up Legal. We provide a mentoring program that connects prospective law students to lawyers for mentoring so they can learn more about the legal profession before they decide whether or not law school is a good fit for them. And we started hosting these Zoom meetups at the beginning of COVID-19 to allow pre-law students, current law students, young lawyers, paralegals, everyone in the legal profession to connect with other legal professionals and learn things that may help them throughout their legal careers. And so I'm excited today to introduce to you Adam Balinski. He is the founder of Crescendo, and they are a bar prep company. So he will talk to you today about just ways to study for the bar and answer all of your questions that you may have about it. So Adam, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to be here with you guys. So we can actually talk as broadly as the bar exam, anything to do with that, but we can also talk about law school. I know some people are in that phase or even pre-law, so I'm happy to share some tips and tricks related to that. And so I love more of a give and take Q&A type situation. I don't have any agenda, today to sell you on anything or to drill or hammer home just one particular idea. So I would just ask, what questions do you have for me, either about law school or about the bar exam? And I'll give you a few seconds to think. You can either type it in the chat box or you can just unmute yourself and ask it. If I don't get any questions, then I'll just start monologuing until I get interrupted with a question. And I can't guarantee that that will be particularly good, but
Adam,
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just unmuted. I hope it's okay.
Yeah,
but what would you recommend when you're studying for the bar? What is the best test prep that will guarantee passing?
Oh, wow. I mean, of course, I'm going to say use Crescendo if you're in a uniform bar exam state. What state are you taking the bar exam in?
Texas Uniform Bar.
All right, great. Well, so a lot of students use an amalgamation, just a combination of multiple bar prep programs. That can be a little bit dizzying. A lot of folks will use something like Barbary, and then they'll use flashcards from another company like Critical Pass. They'll maybe even get some questions from Adaptabar or from Crescendo, and they just kind of get all these different things, and that can be overwhelming. So I would say, one, if you haven't purchased a comprehensive bar prep program, do your research and choose the one that you feel will be the best fit for your particular study needs. And it may be Crescendo, it might be something else. Everybody's different. And just kind of commit to that one rather than overwhelming yourself with a bunch of different things, because you'll have a study schedule from whichever. And I think I'm getting one of my kids at the door behind me. My daughter. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear
they
that.
make a special appearance.
Yeah, exactly. We might have a guest appearance by a 2-year-old. But yeah, so everybody will have their study schedule. Oh man. You hear that? I might, can you excuse me for just one quick second?
Yeah, no problem. Well, I'm happy to answer any questions in the meantime while Adam goes and says hi to his daughter. So yes. Oh, don't worry about raising your hands. Just go ahead and ask away if you want.
Thank you. I don't want to interrupt you guys. That's why I raise my hand.
Oh, it's fine.
All right. So yeah, I heard about how you call this
Crescendo.
Crescendo, like a day after I registered for Captain Bar Prep. So I was like, okay, let me see what's going on. Probably how we met, student was going for the bar as well, and then we can, exchange some experience or some background or some tips, whatever. So yeah, actually I'm an LLM graduate student, so like a foreign lawyer from Cote d'Ivoire, where I graduated a Master's of Law before I came here. And I graduated from USC Law School on July 2020. So now I'm sitting for the bar exam within the state of New York, July 2021. So actually, I'm pretty much on the bar prep right now. But as I said before, I heard about this 2 days before I registered for Captain. Also looking for like a good plan, especially something very affordable, because as an immigrant, it's very tough. And you need to find something that you can afford as well, and make sure to pass your test. So
Yeah.
I cannot say unfortunately, but I already registered for the Kaplan. But I'm glad that to meet you guys here so that we can share experience and tips about the bar exam. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Adam, do you have any thoughts on like how Crescendo compares up to Kaplan, or any tips and advice?
Yeah, first off, I apologize for that. That was kind of fun. My wife took everybody outside for this, but our 2-year-old somehow escaped. And she always goes straight for the office where I'm working because she knows that's where she can get like the lifesaver mints. She's pretty much an addict. But yeah, so just to finish up the thought I had with the first question, and then I'll get to that question, how does Crescendo compare? I was just saying, everybody's got their study schedules, right? And if you have multiple study schedules, it can get overwhelming. I mean, the traditional bar prep programs, just their schedules alone can be overwhelming. I used a traditional bar prep program myself, and I remember I did just a small portion, like 45% of what their schedule asked, because it was just so much. And I never read their brick outlines, like they're really big, thorough outlines. I never had the time. I remember starting to read one and then just getting overwhelmed and being like, how am I possibly going to read all of this? And then if I do get to read it all, how am I going to possibly remember it all? And so, the way Crescendo is different is we try to take, those big brick outlines and distill it down. And there are some other companies that do that. I know Studicata does that as well. And we're trying to get you, just a basic understanding of the critical concepts that you'll need to understand to pass the bar. No matter who you are, when you go into the bar exam, you're never going to be 100% prepared for every single question that could be tested. And that's totally fine. Like, you're not shooting for perfection, right? You're just shooting for a basic level of comprehension and being able to show that level of comprehension to the people that are grading your exam. So what makes Crescendo different is we've just got this really big audio focus. We have audio flashcards, we have audio outlines. We use a variety of mnemonics or memory hooks, including memory palaces, where you walk into, you envision a building or a place and you see different things, and everything symbolizes a different key concept that's related to each other. And so those can be kind of fun. I'll give you an example of a memory palace for our constitutional law outline. You walk into a building, and on the first floor, you see things that relate to rights that are protected by rational basis. And then you go up to the next floor, and you go up in your level of intensity and level of protection. And then finally on the top floor, there's a closet where your privacy rights are protected. And so that's just one example. We also, with our audio outlines, we have an option between listening with classical background music or not. Our audio outlines are very concise and conversational. I used to be a TV reporter, and so just writing for the ear was something that I learned to do through that, and also being able to write concisely. And then we try to use positive psychology as well. So, you might have a lecture or a tutor and somebody try to hammer home, like, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. But we'll say things just like, you'll remember this. And then we'll repeat that key concept that we don't want people to forget, but we'll do it in a way that is spreading, faith in yourself, right? And that you've got this. And so those are some things that make Crescendo different. And because we have that audio outline, audio flashcard focus, we do pick up a lot of people in traditional bar prep programs who think, I've just got downtime. I'm commuting, when I'm washing my dishes or when I'm exercising at the gym, I can still use these audio outlines, these audio flashcards. And so we do see people having success merging our program with other more traditional programs, because you can buy just the outlines and the flashcards. And because it's audio, you can do it pretty much anywhere. And so the way Crescendo all started was, I had a friend of mine, I'd been making my own, like, just hack job audio outlines, and I was using them for the bar exam. And he came up to me and said, I'll pay you $50 a subject. I just want to go golfing today and not feel guilty, because I'm like sick of staring at books and sitting on a computer. And that gave me the light bulb of, oh,
maybe there could be a market for this. And I actually didn't sell them my outlines because I had just pieced together all sorts of stuff. And I'm sure if I sold them, I would have been infringing somebody's copyright somewhere. Certainly it was a fair use type situation for my own personal needs. But anyway, I made mental note, and that's kind of how Crescendo was born, and also explains a little bit about how it's different.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in and kind of echo some of the things that Adam said about studying. When you buy these large commercial prep courses, don't be too intimidated by them and think you have to finish every single piece of that prep course. I mean, there's just no humanly possible way that you're going to be able to do that if you are working for part of the summer or doing something like that. Like, some people are treating bar prep as their full-time job, and maybe you have the luxury to do that. I was not one of those people, so I had to work up until July 4th weekend. So I was working pretty much full-time up until July 4th weekend, and then finally I just told my partners, like, I'm gonna fail the bar. If you don't let me go, I'm not gonna be able to pass, because I haven't had sufficient time to like crack open any of these books. Like, regardless of how much time I've tried to make, with my work schedule, I've only been able to finish like 20% of this course. And I found myself basically cracking open the Barbary course in earnest like July 4th weekend. And I had people in my prep class. I finally started going to the live courses. I had people in my prep class who were like freaking out because they were only at 80% done. And I was like, I'm at like 20% done. So like, don't worry, don't freak out. Like, I should be freaking out. But I still passed on the first time. I think the day that I walked into the exam, I had about 63% done.
Hey, wow, that is a lot of like deathbed cramming. That's incredible.
Well, at some point, I finally realized that for me, like for you, going through those mega outlines wasn't helping me. I was realizing that, essays were important for me. I really needed to just sit down and write those short passage essays, because Virginia had like 7 to 8 short passage essays on their exam. And I realized that I really needed to just crack down and, figure out how to write out these answers. And so, and then the MBE, I mean, I really took a gamble there because I didn't study that much for those multiple choice questions, and I should have. And they were kind of the low hanging fruit. So that was the stuff I got out of the way first. And then I cracked into the essays. But these bar prep courses, like, don't be too intimidated if you look at them and you think there's no humanly possible way that I'm going to finish this.
I had a good friend of mine who wasn't working, and he was working on his bar prep 7 days a week, like 60 hours a week. And by the time it got close to the exam, he was pretty burnt out. And so he was really irritated. He's a really good friend of mine. We got about the same grades in law school, but I ended up outperforming him on the bar, which was just funny and ironic. He hated me because I was just hiking and listening to my audio outlines. I did practice questions, and I would say, you want to, like, in terms of the MBE, do at least like 500, 1,000 practice questions, depending on what kind of scores you're getting back. And then on essays, you definitely want to practice with those as well, depending on your writing speed. Typing speed actually plays a little factor in your score. And some people, writing comes more naturally, and so you don't need to practice quite as much. But for me and myself, I was working, and I have a few kids, and so I couldn't just like shut all that down. And
but
sometimes I'd walk my kids to the
saying,
park, and I just listen to audio, as I was walking them and watching them play on the playground. It was a mostly mindless thing, and I could lend my ear to the audio.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to advocate for saying, like, don't put your whole life on hold for bar prep. I mean, you should continue. If you exercise, you should continue exercising. Like, if you if you have a certain routine in your day, like, don't treat bar prep like it's all encompassing. You will burn yourself out if you study 60 hours a week. Like, that's just crazy.
And then if you fail, you feel like, oh my gosh, like I just sacrificed all that and I still failed. But if you live a balanced, healthy life, you'll just go, okay, well, I'll get it next time. Positive thinking goes a long way, and staying physical, staying healthy goes a long way as well. I did want to add just one quick thing, since you mentioned, like you had done only about 20%, and then by the end you'd only done like 60%. It's one of those tricky things that the big companies do to artificially inflate their bar prep passage rate, because they'll only count you if you've gotten beyond X or Y threshold, which is usually a very incredible threshold. Like if you have the diligence and the time to get to that point, whether it's 70 or 80%, depending on the company, then your passage possibilities go way up. And so, I mean, that says a couple of things. One, if you put in the time and effort, you're way more likely to pass whichever program you use. And two, those bar prep passage rates, like you got to take them in context. It's not everybody who's taking their program, it's those who are really going, in my mind, above and beyond the normal Call of Duty.
For sure.
Yeah, I think this audio is the best option, because I use that too, like even when I was in law school, from back home, even here, because sometimes I get tired of reading the book. So I just go on YouTube, like whatever explanation I can find. It's always useful. I remember my cons law classic, the exam, I think I just remember what I watch on YouTube. Like I just sit down my exam and then I forgot everything about what I read in the book. But I still have all the explanation the guy was going over, on the videos. Then, I use those things and I do my writing and I got my A grade, And I think it's really important. And it's also kind of switching your mind from something else while doing the same preparation. And as you say, it's hard to prepare like 24 hours or let's say like a full-time bar prep. I started and I stopped 1 week. Like I coded. I was like, I feel like I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting down, reading. Like after 3 hours, I'm not learning anything after 3 hours. And I keep pushing myself, keep going. That's the bar. You have to, that's the bar. But I'm not learning anything. So now what I did is like in the afternoon, I just gotta have like a regular bike. I use that bike, I do delivery around the city, just free my mind, and then came back around 4 hours, and I came back home and I can resume the reading. So that's basically what I'm doing right now. But actually, I don't have any audio, and I think the audio process is gonna be really helpful for me.
There's definitely a point of diminishing returns where you hit a wall, and anything else you try to keep pushing through after that, you're not learning very much.
Yeah,
well, there's also an opportunity cost, right? Like if you are spending a lot of time on those really big outlines, reading them, like maybe you'll become more or less an expert in a few little areas of the law, but that might not even get tested on, right? And so you really need that broad exposure to basic principles. And that's why, people like me and Angie never read, those big, huge outlines. We just tried to stick to the basics, but you can create your own audio. You don't have to buy Crescendo's audio outlines. You can just create your own like I did. It does take some time, but it can still be worth it. And, if you create your own audio, it's more memorable in some senses because you created it. Like you remember what you put in, you remember what you took out and why. And that's been one of the challenges of creating an audio bar prep program, is trying to figure out, if these people aren't creating their own program like I did, how can we make it memorable enough that it feels like they're creating the outline with us, and that they're hearing it enough that by the end it's like, oh, I know this cold, it's just as good as if I had created it. And so that's why we've worked in different memory hooks and things, and we do things that make you visualize, so you're kind of co-creating with us, because the way you visualize that house of rights is going to look a little bit different than how I visualize it. And so you kind of go on a journey with us creating, and I don't know that it's as good as if you just wrote your own outline and just kind of dumb down everything. But I think it's as close as we can get. We're always trying to get closer. And one of the things that I will say about the audio that I forgot to mention earlier is that we found chunking is really important, like breaking things into small chunks, like little Lego bricks, and putting them in different buckets in your brain. And at first we started with audio in chunks of like 3 to 5 minutes, which is way better than like a 30-minute lecture or an hour lecture. because you can repeat that and you can really digest that. And so you listen to it like 7 times, you know, while just like walking your dog, and you've got that stuff cold. But what we found is that 3 to 5 minutes, that can even be broken down further into a micro chunk of 30 seconds to a minute, because even in a 3 to 5 minute audio track, you know, there might be 2 minutes in there that are really hard for you, but there could be, you know, 2-3 minutes that you don't need to hear that again. And so we've really tried to isolate the smallest Lego brick we could find that you could repeat. And so you get a 30-second, you know, injection of some principle, and you listen to that 7 to 10 times, or 5 to 15 times now, or even just once, because it's like, oh yeah, I remember that from law school. Yeah, that's easy. That's common sense for me. Like, even if I forget it, my common sense and like intuition and wisdom will make me guess that, because that just jives with my brain. And then you get like a 1 minute mnemonic that has some rule with a bunch of different elements, and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't remember that from law school, you know. So you listen to that one just a ton of times until you get it cold. And so that was just a recent thing that we did last summer, and it was a huge amount of labor to take these audio outlines, which were like 10 to 15, 18 tracks, and then break them into like 80 different subparts for each subject. And so that was a ton of work, but we've gotten great feedback. We actually did some beta testing with it just to see, like, do we really like this new way more than the old way? Because we don't want to like fix it if it ain't broke. And it was just across the board. Everybody was like, this is way, way better. And so no other company that I'm aware of goes so micro. And we're always trying to like improve and do different things. You mentioned going on YouTube, and we do have a lot of free like tips and tricks videos on YouTube that I invite you to check out. But what were you going to say, Angie?
Oh, I was going to ask you, you know, I'm sure you've learned a lot about how people learn in this process of trying to figure out how to make them absorb these things, because, you know, I've definitely, in designing my own mentoring program, become a student of mentoring. I'm sure you've probably become a student of like, how do people actually learn things? So, you know, what are some of the things that you've realized about the process of the way that people internalize information? And is there anything that they should do in addition to listening to the audio outlines that might better help them retain that information, whether it's like drawing it out, diagramming, whatever? Do you have any suggestions as to other methods that they can use to better internalize that information?
Yeah, what I've learned is that everybody is different in a sense, but they're also the same in a sense, right? Like, everyone needs to feel good about themselves and feel positive. Like, for me, that's always step one. Like, are you at peace and with yourself? Because it's really hard to move forward in any aspect of life if you're not just comfortable in your own skin and thinking positively. Number two, everybody needs a certain amount of sleep, right? It might be a little bit different, but if you're not getting the right amount of sleep, your brain's just not operating at its full capacity. Same goes with nutrition, right? Like, we're all similar in that sense. And then, though we each kind of have our hobby methods of learning, you know, some people might be more tactile. It's better for them to handwrite notes. Other people might be more auditory learners or visual learners, or mastery learners, you know, where they want to just, you know, be quizzed and quizzed and quizzed on something. Others are more benefited from teaching others, right? There's a lot of different ways you can learn concepts, but even if you do have like one hobby way to go, one kind of innate way to go, don't throw all your cards in that bucket. If you expose yourself to the same principles in a variety of different ways, you tend to glean, you know, new insights, and it becomes even more memorable. When we have people use our audio, one of the things we recommend that is a little bit experimental, like, we haven't done any research to verify this actually helps, but theoretically, to me, it makes some sense. You know, as you study different subjects, choosing different study environments for that subject. And so, you know, torts, you might go to the library for that. Property, you might just go on a lawn chair, you know, and soak up some sun and read your property outlines. Or if you're using audio, you know, you can be going to the park for one thing, you know, jogging around the park. For another thing, you could be taking a hike in the mountains. And what I like about that is you can associate these different places with different concepts, and you can visualize those and come back. And it sounds like my 2-year-old somehow escaped again. She's pretty resilient and brilliant. She actually just barely started speaking, which is really fun. I may just let her in so you can enjoy her cuteness, because it will be less distracting for me if she's here.
Okay, bring her on in. In the meantime, does anybody else have questions for Adam? Feel free to drop them in the chat box or go ahead and just jump on camera and ask. There she is. Hello, sweetheart.
Say hi.
Hey, precious. Oh, now she's getting shy. She's like, nope, I don't want anything to do with this.
It's funny, like the problem became the solution. So
When she
anyway.
realized she had to get on camera and participate, she's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, too much
Who
eyes
are you guys?
on me now.
That's the fun of working from home.
So I see somebody's a 2L here. Maybe we should talk a little bit just about law school and like approaching law school. Do you have any specific questions about law school?
I know one of my 1Ls is here too.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I'm sure some people have some questions about.
Yeah, let me prime the pump a little bit. So one of the things that I did different in law school, and it's not a plug at all for Crescendo products because we don't have anything related to this particular thing, and that's just study groups and how to approach study groups. You know, we don't sell a study group program. I don't even know how we begin to sell one. People do buy our audio and use them, you know, throughout law school, but one of the things that made my law school experience super enjoyable and also super successful academically was creating kind of an innovative, different type of study group. You know, most of the time when people create study groups, they just get together, they talk about the readings that they all did, they do practice questions together, you know, they just talk through the tricky things, and they end up getting, you know, great benefit out of that. But if you don't have a lot of time and you're trying to create a study group that's hyper efficient and that ultimately saves you time but makes you more competent, then I would recommend doing something kind of like what we did. And what we did was we had enough people in our study group where we could have 2 people per subject each week. And in that week, they became like the experts in that subject, and they would teach us. And so each night, and you know, there's some studies that suggest reading right before bed, you know, whatever you read there, you're going to be kind of digesting that as you sleep, and it will be more memorable. But each night I'd read through 2 sets of notes for every subject that I didn't read the books for. And it would only take me, you know, for one subject, it only take 20 minutes to go through 2 sets of notes. And the reason we had 2 people per subject was so you could have kind of an internal audit, right? Like we didn't want to miss anything, and we wanted 2 sets of eyes so we could kind of approach the subject in 2 different ways. It also helped us stay individually accountable, because like, wow, I don't want my notes to look like junk and like the other person's notes to look amazing. And so, you know, 10 to 20 minutes, I looked through my torts notes. And then if I hadn't done, you know, the property reading for that week, I would, you know, spend another 10 to 20 minutes just looking over the property notes. And then we get together 20, 30 minutes before class, and we just ask questions based on those notes. And those experts got to be teachers. And of course, that was beneficial for them. And so they felt like they could really, really get the concepts. A lot of times the questions we talked about in our study group were the same kind of questions the professor would ask in class. And I don't think the professors ever knew that we weren't reading in the traditional sense. We were studying and preparing, and actually preparing in a very effective manner, but we weren't reading every case word for word. And when we did read cases, the ones that were assigned to us, because we were the subject matter expert in that area, we read more thoroughly and cautiously, because we knew others were relying on us, which turns out to be a very beneficial skill as you go to actually become an attorney, because you're not skimming a million things and just trying to stay, you know, get your head above water, but you're getting into it deep enough that you can explain it and help your peers. And so I felt that that made me more prepared to be a great attorney when that time came. Another thing that I'd mention about this, if you try this, this kind of way of creating a study group, is that you can rotate every week who's on whatever subject. And because my first semester, for example, we had 3 different key subjects, and then we had our writing class. And so every 3 weeks, I do the torts reading, I do the property reading, I do the, I can't remember what the other subject was I had that semester, but you wouldn't get, like, the readings wouldn't get too stale for a particular subject because you're getting them every 3 weeks. And so you're not just setting them aside. So we did share outlines, we did do practice questions together as it got more toward finals, and that was obviously a benefit as well. But the first 2 semesters of law school, we had all the same classes with the same students in those classes. And so it was really easy to set up and implement this program. And I didn't actually choose anybody based on some kind of scoring system. When I got the idea, I was 2 weeks into law school and I was just hating my life because I'm so extroverted, I used to be a teacher. And so I was just not thriving sitting at a desk all day by myself reading for the most part, and then having a few breaths of fresh air when I was actually in class and with other humans. And so I had this idea come to me, and I just picked the first 6, 7 random people I could find, and just hey, do you want to try this? And they're like, I don't know. And I was like, hey, let's do a 2-week trial period. And then if you don't like it, you don't have to continue on, no pressure, and everybody stuck on with it. We had a late joiner because somebody approached us and said, hey, this sounds super fun. It might be helpful for me. Do you mind if I join? And, we looked at our schedule and we're like, I don't know, there's no place where you could fit in. But then, we're just nice humans. And so we're like, okay, well, come join us anyway. And we ended up revamping our schedule. And the way it worked out is we had a week off here and there, which was really awesome for doing, our brief for our legal writing class or our memo for our legal writing class. Can you imagine just 1 full week where you're not worried about doing any of the reading, and all you do is just read each other's class notes and then go to a 20-30 minute, session right before class with your friends to hang out and talk about the principles. I mean, it was pretty cool. So if you are, the 1L that's on this call or 2L, I would recommend maybe trying something like that. And even if it's just for 1 class where there's a lot of reading and you're struggling, you can just create a study group just for that 1 class, because it might not be that you have the same students in all this and all the same classes like I had. You could just do it for that 1 class. You could do it with 1 other person, and just every other week, you tutor each other, or you could do it 4 people, and every other week, or however you want to set it up. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but hopefully there was something in there that maybe was just oh man, I want to try that.
Yeah, actually, Adam, I did want to ask, since you're on the topic of outlines, I know you guys also have outlines for specific classes in law school. So are those intended to be for just overviews of each class that you could use for finals prep, or are they just intended for bar prep?
Yeah, so both. You'll hear a lot of people, right, when they study for the bar, they go, oh man, I wish I'd done this earlier because now I finally get it. And I didn't get it before, and now I get it, and I would have done better on finals, right? And so because we give lifetime access to all our stuff, we have 1Ls purchasing our whole bar prep program and using it throughout law school. And obviously, it's not going to match up exactly with what your professor teaches. And the way we encourage people to use our audio outlines, if they're doing them in class, is to listen to them early and often just in that very beginning part of the semester. So you've got a great foundation to build upon. 70, 80% of your course is going to overlap with our outlines. It might not be worded in exactly the same way, but everybody's teaching the same basic principles of torts. But if you get that great foundation, which can happen, in just 10 hours, you could spend just 1 full day listening to our torts outlines and have a really solid foundation for the rest of the semester, so you can listen more closely to your professor, who is going to be your academic judge, right? You can get the nuances that they're focusing on, their hobby keys, if you will. And so, oh, I did want to say, if you are creating a study group, just hopping back to that subject real quick, using something like Google Docs or some other file share program can be really good. We use Google Docs because we like to be able to like put in comments for each other. And I'll share one really funny, never mind, I won't share that. Never mind, it's too embarrassing.
No, you totally share that.
Okay, so we would have our notes open in class, right? And we're all in the same notes in class because we just shared notes. We didn't like all type our individual notes. I mean, some of us maybe did, maybe we did both, but so we'd have like comments popping up here and there. And I remember one time I was trying to make some kind of joke, and I was saying something to one of my classmates who was part of this group that he should just ask the kid in the red shirt beside him, who was another member of our study group. And I thought it would be funny, but I accidentally left out the R in shirt. And and at the exact same time, you have, the 7 people in our study group, and we're randomly sitting in different places throughout the class, all busted up laughing for no apparent reason. And so the professor suddenly felt like super uncomfortable, and I couldn't get it together. So I actually ended up going out in the hall and just like crying and laughing. And it isn't even that funny, but when you're super stressed out as a 1L, like everything's way more funny, right? So
especially when the rest of the class is super quiet.
yeah,
And
it's just like,
nobody
oh my
else-
gosh, this is so bad. So I actually went up and apologized to the professor after class and explained what happened. And he's like, oh, that's kind of funny. So
do you guys do other exams too, like the MPRE or the patent bar?
So we do the MPRE. We don't do the patent bar. The patent bar is open book. Obviously, with an open book exam, it still can be helpful to memorize things, but we're not really, it's not high on our priority list, if you will. We are looking at creating paralegal program. We've actually got a few subjects already there, and we're trying to cross over into that domain. But we do the MPRE. You asked about that one, and that was actually how we got started. That was kind of how we tested the waters. And by we, I mean at that point it was just me in my downtime trying to write an MPRE outline, and then I begged people to try it, to like listen to it and give me feedback. And the feedback, even though they were really rudimentary, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. And I thought, okay, like I can do this. And then I was able to get an investor and then, build the team out. And so,
do you have any student reps on your team, or is it all just professionals?
So we have like a referral program that we don't, ask people to table. Tabling is a little bit, I don't know, here or there as to how successful it is. But okay, first I just need to say something that irritates me about the industry. A lot of times people will become student reps so they can get like a free course. And so they're trying to sell people on a course they haven't even used. And just because they want to get free access to it, but they don't even know if personally it will be the best fit for them. So it's kind of this weird
multi-level marketing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of a weird system. And so we don't really do that at all. We just say, if you really like our program, yeah, we do have a referral program where you can get like your own discount codes and share them with your friends. And if they end up buying, but we don't like try to recruit people to that program. Usually they just reach out to us and say, hey, I want to tell my friends, is there a way like I can maybe get some money out of that? But
and is Crescendo mainly targeted towards UBE states, or do you have also state specific preps?
Yeah, so there's like the 37 and counting UBE states, and so we have a comprehensive program for that. 2,000 MBE questions just about, and then way more essays and MPTs than you could ever want. So like if you're in a UBE state, personally, I think it's like Crescendo is a no-brainer, but everybody's different. And but every single state but Louisiana, uses the MBE or the essay. Sorry, not Indiana, Louisiana. Did I say Louisiana or Indiana? I can't remember. Yeah, okay. For some reason, my mind just broke right there. But yeah, every single state except for Louisiana uses the MBE or the multiple choice portion. And we sell that as a we sell that separately for those that need it. And so, in California, we can get people through the multiple choice in every state but Louisiana, but then every state uses the MPRE. And so we have at least that. We have found people buying our UBE outlines in non-UBE states and finding that there's just so much crossover in their state-specific exams that it's still kind of helpful. But we don't typically recommend that. We just say, hey, just get the MBE stuff if you're in any state but Louisiana that's not UBE. And I think more and more states will go UBE. And I think we're going to see some interesting innovations in the UBE. I don't know if you've heard, but like 4 or 5 years from now, it's going to be even more performance test focused. And I love that idea, because even though I market a memory focused product, I think memorization exams are kind of not very helpful. I personally hate them because as a student, I hate them. Like, I like them as a company because that's kind of our deal. But if I could, rewrite the industry and how the exam works, I wouldn't have it be memorization intensive, because we've got Google, we've got Westlaw, we've got LexisNexis. Like, test my competency and ability to use the tools that are out there. And so I think we'll see over time more and more of a pivot in that direction. And I think it's a good direction. And we're looking forward to that and already creating like different types of innovative materials for when that time comes. But
just to take it,
I digress.
For people who, like me, went to school before the UBE was around.
Yeah.
Can you explain, basically how the UBE works? Like, do you just apply for one exam and then you apply for this, state character and fitness later? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so you take the exam in a specific state, and every state has their own minimum UBE score for passing. And then once you pass the UBE, there's different transferability rules. So some states, you have up to 3 years where you can take that score and use it as part of your part of your application, your bar application. Some states are 5 years. It just kind of depends. So just to give you an example, I took the bar exam in 2016 in Utah. And now I'm living in Missouri, and I'm on my 5th year. And so I can still use my score, and I'm going to, because I'd like to be licensed here as well. So I'll use that as part of my bar application before the end of this year, because I'm still in that 5-year window. I'll still have to do, Missouri's character and fitness stuff and all that background stuff, employment history, address history, all that pain in the neck stuff that everybody, that's done a bar application can remember so fondly. And then, like, anytime you've ever talked to the police, it is just like, oh man, that time we got in trouble as like 12, 14-year-olds, whatever. It's a joyous experience. So look forward to that if you haven't done your bar application.
Yeah, if you aren't keeping track of all the places you've ever lived, start now.
Yeah.
More than wandering nomad.
Yeah.
How do I have like 10 addresses for the last 8 years?
Yeah, it's crazy. When you're in school, that tends to be how it is, as a young professional these days too. So other things about the UBE, it's got 3 parts. The bulk of it's the multiple choice. That's 50% of your score. Then there's an essay portion that's 30% of your score. And then a performance test where you get like a closed universe, a library that's just limited, which you use to fulfill some kind of task. And you get 2 of those, and that's 20% of your score. So that's kind of how the exam looks, and it's over 2 days. And depending on the state you're in, you might have like the essay performance test first or the multiple choice first. So you want to check with your state. And there's other things that, are different from state to state, even across UBE states. So it's good to just check your state's bar application website. and make sure you're in the know about what you can bring or can't bring.
And in the chat box, Sheila, you were asking how far back do you need to go back for the background check if you're an older student? It depends state by state. I think for Virginia, we had to go back 10 years regardless of, how old you were. So
Yeah, I think that was the same in Utah as well. Yep.
yeah, so it's
Kind of
pretty
depends.
far back.
Yeah, and you have to go. I mean, where I did it too, I had to do like my fingerprinting and all that jazz too. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, I got to do my fingerprinting in a jail. So I had to like go into this like super long hallway underground, go way back to the office where I could get my fingerprint done. That was interesting. So just start collecting all of that information now, all the places you've ever lived. I mean, you would have had to collect a lot of it probably for your law school application as far as any disciplinary actions or any, any charges, criminal charges or anything like that. You usually have to collect those for the law school application already. But I don't think the addresses came into play until when I was applying for the bar.
Yeah. While we're on you shared kind of a funny story there of going into, a prison for that. One thing I wanted to add is regardless of where you're taking the exam, if you have any kind of disability at all, we partner with the National Disabled Law Students Association. And if you are going to get some kind of accommodation, request it early and don't just wait till the last minute. And also, like, you want to call if you can early on and just say, here's my situation. I have carpal tunnel, like typing doesn't really work. I need to use voice to speech software. And, if that's the case, then hopefully they'll create the accommodation where you're just in your own separate room with an individual proctor. And so you can do your voice to text. And I actually have a friend who did that and was in that very situation. And just a funny story about how his exam played out. He had just barely finished and they said time. And then his proctor, like the one just looking over, just making sure that he wasn't cheating, right, said something that took control of his screen, highlighted like half of his last essay and deleted it. And so he was just like, how could this possibly happen? And so the proctor felt terrible because they saw what happened. It wasn't like a question of, did this happen or not? And it became the question of, how can we possibly fix this? Because like the time is up. And what they ended up doing is they said, okay, you'll have 5 minutes to try to replace what got deleted. And he's like, oh my goodness. And so he spouted something off. He ultimately ended up passing. And so there was never a question of like whether or not he, how he could complain, right? Thankfully he passed, and he was one of our earliest Crescendo users. That's how I know the story, because he shared it with us, and we just thought it was both hilarious and terrible.
That is terrible. I actually have a reoccurring nightmare that like I actually wake up in the middle of the exam, the proctor calls time and he says you have 1 hour left, and then my computer just starts deleting my essay.
Oh man, that's funny. So yeah, he lived your dream. Hey,
Yeah.
there's another question. What was your question?
Yeah, that was about the New York bar exam, especially in the essay portion. So I just want to share the screen if I'm able to do it.
Oh, I don't think you'll be able to do it because you're not a co-host.
If I cannot, let me go over and then I will try to read that for you.
What was your question though?
So that was about the essay portion, because I just got the information about the bar exam with Babri. Mm-hmm. And they said the New York bar exam is a 2-day uniform bar exam, like a 1 day. Day one, you got 2 90-minute multi-state performance tests, question MPT, and 6 30-minute multi-state essay. So I'm just wondering how the essay works within New York State, because I don't have any information, but I didn't start the prep class yet. So if you guys can give me some information about how that essay works, because I have a friend of mine saying like, oh, the essay portion with New York bar exam is totally different from the one from California. And I don't really know how it works. So if you guys can help me out.
So it is totally different. You know, in California, they have longer essays than what you get in the UBE. So the UBE, and since New York is a UBE state, this would apply there. You get 6 30-minute essay questions. And so you don't have the time to go into as great depth as they do in California. I think that's part of the reason why the California passage rate is so low, because those more involved essays, if you don't happen to know pretty deep that law, you know, it can be a bit of a bummer, you know, to have 60 minutes where you don't have much to show for it. But with just the 30-minute one, you can usually cobble together something that's semi-different and or semi, you know, passable. And one of the things I'd say you should practice too is like how to cobble together an answer when you know nothing. And so doing that early on before you study can be a great way to practice that, because what you'll find is different areas of the law kind of overlap. Like you can import principles from one area to the next, like intent, right, is always a thing. And it's framed in slightly different ways in different areas of the law, but that's always an issue, right? Unless it's kind of a strict liability situation. And so there's these overlaps where you can make best guesses and create some rules that you could use. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions for Adam? I know we're getting close to time.
Also, I have a question about the audio. How you guys dealing with the audio product, and you know, see if I can go over some of them, you know, to Adam Balinski.
Yeah, I'll put an email address in the chat box. And if you just email grant@crescendo.com, I just sent that email. He can send you a link where you can get one of our outlines for free. So you can just try it out and see if it works for you. So whether that's secured transactions or torts, whatever, you can use it for any subject, and you'll get free lifetime access to that audio, regardless of whether or not you purchase something later. So
That's cool.
Okay.
yeah, so just ask Grant and he'll get you a personalized code for that.
Awesome.
Any other questions? I think we're getting close on our time, right, Angie?
Yeah, we've got 2 minutes left, but thank you so much for being here today, Adam, and answering everybody's questions. If you guys have further questions, please connect with Adam on LinkedIn. He dropped his LinkedIn in the chat box earlier, so just scroll up. And we have our virtual happy hour tomorrow, so please feel free to stop by and hang out. We'll be actually breaking people out into breakout rooms. You'll get to interact with each other instead of having somebody speak to you. We'll actually be breaking everybody out into small groups of just 2 people in each room. So come on by, hang out. You'll get to meet pre-law students, current law students, lawyers, whoever happens to be there. And I look forward to seeing all of you. So thank you so much for your time today, Adam.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Angie.
Thank you.
And nice to meet you all. Thanks for your good questions.
Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.